Hi, Max Keiser here. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. Time now to go to New York City and speak with Jim Rickards, author of this new book. It's called The Death of Money. Remember, Jim did the Currency Wars book, which became an instantaneous global sensation and bestseller. Now he's got the new one, The Death of Money. Jim Rickards, welcome back to the Keiser Report.
Thank you, Max.
All right, let me read you a quote from your book. Quote, "It was the most blatant case of insider trading I have ever seen." This is a quote from the first chapter of your book. Tell us about it.
Well, the insider trading referred to in Chapter 1 of The Death of Money, Max, has to do with shorting airline stocks in advance of 9/11. So there was insider trading ahead of the 9/11 attack. It was very blatant, very clear. It was not picked up at the time. It was by some people in the market, I should say, but not by the intelligence authorities or any national security officials, but it was seen in the market. That quote that you read, by the way, comes from John Mulheron. John was actually tried and convicted of insider trading related to the 1980s cases in the early 90s. His conviction was overturned by the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals said the trial court got it right. He was totally exonerated, but I mentioned that only to say that here's a guy who knew about M&A, leaked information, insider trading, etc. He was one of the most famous stock traders on Wall Street, ran one of the largest specialists on the New York Stock Exchange. He was, at the time, the market maker in American Airlines stock. So hard to find anyone who knew more about trading, more about insider trading, market manipulation than John Mulheron. And that conversation took place actually at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. So I was part of an investigation. This all discussed in the book. There's a lot of academic evidence, there's forensic evidence, there's anecdotal evidence, but the case is overwhelming that there was insider trading ahead of 9/11.
All right, you mentioned this CIA headquarters and the fact that there was talk about insider trading ahead of 9/11 in the days leading up to the events of 9/11, particularly 4 days leading up to 9/11, looking at the forensic evidence and looking at markets as a way to aggregate lots and lots of data. And you talk about this in your book, the way that your team presents to the CIA a way of what you call market intelligence, or MarkEnt, which is to use this very sensitive options market as a way to give a telltale sign of activity that's happening around the world and whether potentially this would flag a terrorist attack. So in the days leading up to the 9/11, in the options market, in those airline options, you have concluded without any equivocation that there was insider trading on those options leading up to the event, correct?
Well, that's my conclusion, Max, but it's not just my conclusion. As I mentioned, there are 3 major academic studies as well as other anecdotal evidence all pointing in the same direction. So to me, it's an open and shut case. It's all described in the book, which is heavily footnoted, I should say. So it's not just sort of wild speculation. I think it's very well documented. We take a look at the 9/11 Commission report, which reached a different conclusion, but I sort of deconstruct their famous footnote where they describe why they reached the conclusion and show what the flaws are in the footnote, what the flaws are in the forensic technique that the 9/11 Commission used. But your larger point that markets give us price signals, we know that, but how to look behind the price signal and understand exactly what's going on. By the way, this technique, which we explored for the CIA, is a completely normal technique used by hedge funds every day. Now, hedge funds are looking for insider trading around M&A deals. They're looking for a leak. You know, we see this all the time. A stock suddenly soars for no reason. There's no news. Maybe the market's flattened down, but a particular stock goes way up, and everyone said, gee, what's happening with that stock? And then 3 days later, we find out that it's the subject of a takeover that's announced, but clearly the takeovers don't come out of the thin air. They're, lawyers and accountants and experts and managers work on these things for weeks and sometimes months, and that's the inside group. But sometimes the information leaks out, people trade on it, and you see the price action ahead of the announcement. That's exactly what we saw on 9/11. There was massive, massive buying of put options, and of course when you buy a put option, that's a bet that the stock is going to go down. Massive buying of put options on American Airlines and United Airlines in the last several trading days ahead of 9/11. And again, that's been studied extensively, so I don't think there's any question that it was insider trading. I should add, however, that this was insider trading by terrorist associates. I want to be rigorous and scientific about the evidence. but sort of separate this from some of the crazy theories. There are crazy theories out there that, somehow the U.S. government was behind 9/11. That's all nonsense. And again, I want to separate myself from that. But the basic idea that the terrorists and their associates, that network, were engaged, who did know about the attack, were engaged in insider trading ahead of 9/11. That's very clear.
All right. Of course, when you trade options, you have to do it through a broker. We know from the investigative journalism of Lars Scholl, we know from statements from Deutsche Bank here in Europe, that these trades were done at Alex Brown, which is a firm not too far from the CIA, who was run by Buzzy Krongard. When I was working at Alex Brown, he was leading up the firm. He then took a job as the deputy director of the CIA under George Tenet during the events of 9/11. So here you have a firm in Baltimore where the trades were done that was run by the guy who's now the deputy director at the CIA. Your thoughts, your comments?
Well, Buzzy Krongard, former Alex Brown executive, was executive director of the CIA at the time. I haven't looked at all at the Alex Brown trading. To me, it's sort of irrelevant. What I look at is the market as a whole. What we were seeing was really coming through the specialists. Now, you're exactly right, Max. I make the point in the book, nobody trades alone. If you're trading with somebody. So what I really focused on is the overall market action, not any particular firm, but could you tell from the price action and the volume and the momentum itself that something was going on at the time? And of course, we reached the conclusion that something was going on, which was obviously this 9/11 attack was about to happen. But I focus a lot on what's called signal amplification. And just to explain that for the viewers, you can have a very small terrorist trade, meaning, a few thousand shares. Well, someone sees that. It doesn't make the person who sees it a terrorist. They're just a specialist or a hedge fund or someone is kind of watching the tape, and they say, you know what, there's no reason for the stock to be going down. There's no reason for anyone to be buying puts. Someone knows something I don't, and they'll buy more puts. That then puts more pressure on the stock. There's more put buying. So by the end of the day, you may have millions of shares that have traded. It doesn't mean all those people are terrorists or insiders. That's actually legitimate trading. If you're watching the tape and you do what I call a piggyback trade on the original trade, that's actually not illegal. And all those people are not terrorists. Only the original trade, my example, a couple thousand shares would have been the terror trade. The rest of it is piggybacking or signal amplification. But this is where the 9/11 Commission fell down, because when they went back to investigate after the fact, they looked at the big guys. The big guys are invariably not the insider traders. They're not the terrorists. They're the guys piggybacking. You got to go all the way down to that small initial trade to find it, and that's what we did on a multi-year strategic study for the CIA. We basically explained how you could use that forensic technique, that market information, possibly to detect the next spectacular terrorist
Right, you talk
attack.
about signal amplification. When I was talking to Cantor Fitzgerald, brokers and bankers in the days leading up to 9/11, they themselves were buying these airline puts. They told me, based on rumors that were coming out of Alex Brown, associated with Buzzy Krongard. So this looks to me as if CIA insiders knew enough about what was going on, but chose to make money rather than blowing the whistle.
Well, I don't have any evidence of that, Max. The point I'm making is that you could have a lot of put buying in those stocks, particularly AMR and UAL, American Airlines and United Airlines. You could have a lot of put buying. In fact, there was a lot of put buying. That's clearly documented. I mean, we have the price information, we have the volume information, so we know what was actually transacted, and that's been studied very extensively. But the point I'm making is a lot of that put buying could have been people saying, hey, something's going on. We don't know what it is. Why is everyone buying these puts? We're going to buy some more. We're going to make the same bet. We don't know why. And you don't have to know why. All you have to know is that somebody knows something you don't. So the point I'm making is that a very small terrorist trade could have been amplified into a much larger market trade involving quite a few Wall Street firms. So again, it only takes a small amount of illegal trading or terrorist trading to be amplified and imitated and piggybacked in the market to a much larger volume. So again, I haven't looked at Cantor Fitzgerald or Alex Brown in particular. I've looked at the market as a whole, but the idea that a lot of people were buying puts based on the original signal,
Right,
that makes perfect sense.
And presumably somebody who was trading on their own demise was unable to collect the profits because some money was left over at Alex Brown and never collected, presumably from a banker who chose to take the money instead of running away and escaping with their lives. All right, let's move on.